never have happened if it hadn't been for Saddam Hussein. Because when I went to the United Nations, it was right after the Gulf War, and the ceasefire had been translated into a bunch of sanctions resolutions. And my instructions as an ambassador was to say perfectly terrible things about Saddam Hussein all day long, which he deserved because he'd invaded another country. And so there was a poem that appeared in the Baghdad press that compared me to many things, but among them an unparalleled serpent. And I happened to have the snake pin that I had before. And so I wore it whenever we did Iraq. And then I was out giving a press conference, and cameras noticed that I had on a snake pin. They said, "Why do you have on that snake pin?" And I said, "Because Saddam Hussein called me an unparalleled serpent." And then I thought, well, this is fun. So I went out and I bought a lot of different pins that I thought would describe what we were going to do on any given day. So on good days, I wore flowers and balloons and butterflies, and on bad days, various bugs and animals, carnivorous animals. And so when people said, "What are we going to do today?" It was after first President Bush had said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." So I said, "Read my pins." And that's how it all started. So this is the original pin. I sometimes said pins got me into trouble, and this is one time they did. This is a picture, actually, where President Clinton and Secretary Cohen and actually President Clinton began this because we were talking about something and a photographer walked in and President Clinton put his hand over his mouth, and then we did the other thing. And then when we were in Russia for the summit, I decided to wear these pins. And President Putin said to President Clinton, "How come, we always notice whatever pin Secretary Albright has on. So why are you wearing those pins?" And I said, well, these are the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. And I said, because of your Chechnya policy, which was really, he got really mad at me. And so it's one time that my pins got me into trouble. These, what happened was that we actually found a listening device, a bug, in one of the rooms near my office in the State Department. And it was planted, we discovered it had been planted by the Russians. And we complained about it in a variety of different ways. But then what happened was the next time I met with the Russians, I wore the bug, and they knew what I was saying. This one really does have a great foreign policy story, because what happened, and let me just say, the reason that I did the book and the reason I even wore the pins was that I think my niche is trying to make foreign policy more interesting to non-experts, and it allows me to tell foreign policy stories. That was the whole purpose of it, and the role that they played. And what happened was, it's actually an arrow, but I wore it when we were negotiating the anti-ballistic missile treaty, and the foreign minister of Russia said, Igor Ivanov at the time, said, "Is that one of your interceptors?" And I said, "Yes, and we make them very small, and it's time to negotiate." So if you remember the pictures of President Clinton when he went to North Korea, it was all in front of the same crazy background. But I met him, and I knew that they had been saying terrible things about the United States, what a horrible country we were. I knew that they would release this picture. And so the idea that I wore this very big flag standing next to them, they had to realize that we weren't so bad, or they had to at least question why it was that we were standing there together. When I was in a really rotten mood, I wore my bee to sting Yasser Arafat to get him going. So I had a lot of different pins for the Middle East. I had a crab when I was really fed up with them, and lots of turtles when things were going very slowly. The book's doing real well, and people seem to love the exhibit. So I'm really excited to have it here, because the whole concept began while I was working for President Clinton, and so it's just nice to be within the museum that is dedicated to his administration and all the good things that he was able to do, and the good time that we had working together.